What's up, everybody? Today's story is about a man who thought he was in love. Turns out he was in a competition, and he didn't even know it. His girlfriend's friends made a bet that she could get a boring guy to propose within a year. He was the punchline, the target, the whole game. She spent 12 months performing affection like it was a talent show audition, and he bought every second of it. Until one night, he overheard a group call where they were all laughing about how she won. Most people would have exploded, screamed, made a scene. Not this guy. This guy is a data analyst. He doesn't do scenes. He does spreadsheets. And over the next 2 weeks, he quietly, calmly, and completely dismantled the life she thought she had locked down. On the night she expected a ring at their anniversary dinner, he handed her an eviction notice. This is the most calculated exit strategy I've ever covered on this channel. Let's get into it. My girlfriend's friends. Bet she couldn't get a boring guy to propose in a year. I was the target. When I found out, I didn't confront her. I spent 2 weeks quietly removing everything. On our anniversary, instead of a ring, I served her an eviction notice. I want to be upfront about something. I'm not the kind of guy people write stories about. I'm not flashy. I'm not dramatic. I work as a data analyst for a financial services firm, the kind where you stare at Excel models for 9 hours and then go home and stare at a different screen. I track patterns in data sets that most people would find mind-numbing. And honestly, I kind of love it. Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't pretend. Numbers don't laugh about you on a group call with their friends at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night, but I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Bryce. I'm 29. I lived, in an apartment in Columbus, Ohio. 2-bedroom, decent kitchen, a balcony that faced a parking lot, but still got good light in the morning. I'd been renting there for about 3 years. The lease was in my name. Always had been. That detail matters later. I met her. I'm going to call her the contestant because that's exactly what she was. At a friend's housewarming party about 14 months before everything fell apart. She was standing by the kitchen island talking to someone I didn't know. And she had this energy about her. Confident. Animated. The kind of person who makes the whole room feel like it's orbiting them. I was standing in the corner holding a plate of those little cracker things with cream cheese on them, trying to figure out if I knew anyone else there. She came up to me. That's the part that got me. She came up to me. In my entire adult life, that had happened maybe twice. She said, "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else." I said, "I'd rather be home watching the Reds game." She laughed. Not a polite laugh, a real one. Or what I thought was a real one. Turns out she was already in character. We started dating about a week later. And look, I know what people imagine when they hear data analyst goes on a date. Boring. Quiet. Probably talks about quarterly variance at dinner. And yeah, okay. I did once explain standard deviation to her at a restaurant because she asked about my job and I got carried away. But she seemed into it. She leaned in. She asked follow-up questions. She said, "I love how passionate you are about this stuff." And I believed her. Because why wouldn't I? Who fakes interest in standard deviation? The contestant does. The contestant fakes interest in everything. The relationship moved fast. She was at my apartment most weekends by month 2. By month 4, she'd basically moved in. Toothbrush, her own shelf in the closet, a drawer in the bathroom. By month 6, she had a key. I never formally asked her to move in. It just kind of happened, the way it does when someone is slowly, methodically inserting themselves into your life because they're running a clock you don't know about. I should mention, and this is one of those details that doesn't really go anywhere, but it's stuck in my head. She had this thing about always rearranging the spice rack. Every time she cooked, she'd reorganize the whole rack by color instead of alphabetically. I'd put it back. She'd change it again. We had this ongoing non-argument about it for months. It was the kind of thing that felt cute at the time. Now it just feels like another small way she was marking territory. I was happy. Genuinely, uncomplicatedly happy. I cooked for her. I remembered her coffee order. Oat milk, 2 sugars, extra hot. I sent her articles I thought she'd find interesting. I planned weekends. I bought her a first edition copy of her favorite book for her birthday because she'd mentioned it once in passing and I remembered. That's the kind of guy I am. I pay attention. I retain information. It's literally my job. And I applied that same attention to her because I thought she deserved it. And she let me. She accepted all of it. Every gesture, every thoughtful moment, every evidence of care. She collected it like tokens in a game. Because that's what it was. Okay, time out. You ever watch a reality dating show where someone's clearly there for the wrong reasons? Playing a character, performing emotions, and the whole time a producer's tracking the drama arc? That's what the contestant was running. Except the only audience was her group chat. She turned a real person's real feelings into content for 4 friends. Bryce was out here buying first editions and memorizing coffee orders while she was filling out a proposal readiness bingo card. This isn't a romance, it's a heist. And the thing she was stealing? His time. Spoiler alert, she's about to get billed for it. I want to talk about the night everything changed. Because one conversation, one overheard conversation, rearranged my entire understanding of the previous year. It was a Tuesday, around 11:15 p.m. I'd been asleep on the couch. I dozed off watching some documentary about bridge engineering. I know. And woke up to the sound of her voice coming from the bedroom. The door was cracked open. She was on a video call with her friends. 4 of them, from what I could tell. I assumed it was just regular catching up stuff. I almost rolled over and went back to sleep. But then I heard my name. Bryce is literally ready, she said. He's been dropping hints for weeks. I give it 2 months, tops. One of her friends said, "No way, you actually did it." Another one said, "I told you she'd win, pay up." And then they all laughed. Not a giggle, not a chuckle. A full, collective, we've been waiting for this laugh. The kind of laugh that has history behind it. Inside jokes, running commentary. Months of it. I sat up on the couch, very slowly, and I listened. Over the next 15 minutes, I heard everything. The bet had been made about a year before, right around when we started dating. The terms, from what I could piece together, were this. The contestant's friends had challenged her to get a boring guy to propose within 12 months. Not just date her, not just fall for her, propose. Ring, knee, the whole thing. And they'd chosen me, or she'd chosen me. I'm still not sure who picked the target, but I was the target. They called me the spreadsheet guy. That was my nickname in their group chat. I heard one of them say, "I can't believe spreadsheet guy is about to propose. Remember when she said he explained standard deviation at dinner?" More laughing. They talked about how she'd had to fake being interested in number stuff and how she deserved an award for sitting through my explanations of variance analysis. One of them said, "Girl, you earned this." Another said, "What's the payout?" And someone said, "200 each. Brianna gets the pot." Brianna, that was the contestant's real name. Brianna gets the pot. 200 each from 4 friends. $800. My entire relationship, every dinner, every morning, every quiet Sunday, every time I thought someone finally saw me for who I was, had a price tag. $800. That's what a year of my life was worth to them. I sat on that couch for about 45 minutes after the call ended. She came out of the bedroom, saw me sitting in the dark, and said, "Babe, why are you still up?" I said, "Fell asleep during the documentary." She said, "You and your documentaries," kissed me on the forehead, and went to bed. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was angry, although, yeah, I was angry, but more because something had clicked into place. All those moments that felt slightly off over the past year. The way she'd bring up marriage casually in conversation. The way she'd point out other couples' engagement rings. The way she'd say things like, "I'm not in a rush, but I know what I want," which sounded romantic at the time, but now sounded like a project manager giving a status update. She wasn't in love with me. She was managing me toward an outcome. And I'd almost delivered it. I'd been looking at rings. Not casually, seriously. I had a browser tab open on my laptop with 3 options from a jeweler downtown. I'd even asked my mom for her opinion on settings. My mom, God, she was going to be devastated. She'd met the contestant twice and said, "Bryce, she's wonderful. I'm so glad you found someone." My mom doesn't say that lightly. She's been protective of me since my dad left when I was 11, and the idea that someone had manipulated her son's feelings for sport would have sent her through the roof. But I didn't tell her yet. Not until I had a plan. Because here's the thing about me, and I know this makes me sound cold, but I promise it's not coldness. It's just how I'm wired. When I encounter a problem, I don't react. I analyze, I gather data, I build a response. Reacting is emotional, responding is strategic, and this situation required strategy, not a shouting match in the kitchen at midnight. So I made a plan. Here's what's happening in Bryce's head right now. This isn't heartbreak. Heartbreak is when someone you love lets you down. What Bryce is experiencing is worse. The realization that the person he loved never existed. The contestant wasn't a flawed girlfriend. She was a character. Every "I love you," every morning kiss. Scripted lines for an audience of 4. Bryce didn't lose a partner. He lost a year to someone who treated his sincerity as a punchline. And the most dangerous thing you can do to a calm, strategic person? Give them a reason to get strategic about you. She created the game. He's about to finish it. Step 1 was information. I needed to know exactly what I was working with. Legally, financially, practically. What's in my name? What's in hers? What are my obligations and what are my options? The lease. The apartment lease was in my name. Solo. She'd never been added to it. When she moved in, I'd mentioned adding her, and she'd said, "Don't worry about it, we'll deal with it later." At the time, I thought she was being low maintenance. Now I realize she probably didn't want her name on anything permanent because permanent wasn't the plan. The plan was a proposal, a payout, and presumably an exit. What she'd do after getting the ring, stay, leave, keep going, I have no idea. And honestly, I don't care anymore. So the lease was mine. That was the foundation. My furniture. The couch, the bed frame, the dining table, the TV, the desk, the bookshelf. All mine. Purchased before she moved in. I had receipts for most of them. The stuff she'd brought over was mostly clothes, some kitchen gadgets, a few decorative pillows, and a rug she'd bought for the living room. Her name wasn't on any of the major items. The finances. We didn't have joint accounts. She Venmo'd me her share of rent each month, $750, which was exactly half. I had the full transaction history on the app. Clean, documented, no ambiguity about who paid what. Here's the part that required careful execution. I had 2 weeks until our 1-year anniversary. She'd been dropping hints about the dinner for weeks. Make sure you pick somewhere nice. I want to dress up. This one's special, Bryce. She was expecting a proposal. Her friends were expecting a proposal. The whole bet was building toward that dinner. I was going to use that timeline. Over the next 14 days, I moved my valuables out of the apartment. Slowly, deliberately, a box at a time. I rented a small storage unit about 10 minutes away, month to month, nothing fancy, and started transferring things. Monday, my personal documents, passport, birth certificate, financial records. I'd kept them in a fireproof safe in the closet. She never looked in there. Tuesday and Wednesday, my book collection. I have about 200 books, mostly nonfiction, some sci-fi, a surprising amount of cookbooks for a guy who makes the same 4 meals. I moved them in 3 trips using reusable grocery bags. She was at work, didn't notice. Thursday, my gaming setup. Desktop computer, monitor, headset, keyboard. I told her I was taking the PC to a repair shop because it was running slow. She said, "Okay, babe." It didn't come back. The following week, I moved the bigger stuff. I took a Friday off work and hired 2 guys from a moving service. Just labor. I had my own truck borrowed from a buddy named Owen. We moved the couch, the dining table, and the bed frame while she was at her office. I replaced the bed frame with an air mattress and told her that night, the frame cracked. I ordered a new one. Should be here next week. She said, "Ugh, okay," and slept on the air mattress without questioning it. The couch, I said, was being reupholstered. The dining table, I said I'd lent to Owen for a dinner party he was hosting. Lie after lie, and I felt nothing about them. Because she'd been lying to me for a year. My 2 weeks of lies were a rounding error compared to her 12 months. I should say something about how it felt. Moving your own belongings out of your own apartment while your girlfriend is at work, knowing she'll come home and not notice what's missing because she never paid attention to what was yours in the first place. It's a strange kind of lonely. Not sad lonely, more like clinical lonely. Like you're performing surgery on your own life, and you have to stay steady, or the cut goes wrong. I didn't let myself feel it. Not yet. There'd be time for that later. Right then, I had a schedule to keep. I also contacted my landlord. His name's Dennis. Older guy, semi-retired, owns the building and 3 others. I'd been a solid tenant for 3 years, paid on time every month, never had a noise complaint, fixed a leaky faucet myself once, and didn't even ask for a rent reduction. Dennis liked me. When I called him and explained that I needed to transfer myself off the lease early, and that my girlfriend, who was not on the lease, would need to either sign a new lease in her own name or vacate, he didn't hesitate. He said, "Bryce, you've been my best tenant, whatever you need." He drafted the paperwork. My lease termination would be effective 30 days from signing. The contestant would receive formal notice that she was an unauthorized occupant and had 30 days to either apply for her own lease, at market rate, which Dennis noted had gone up since I'd signed mine, or move out. Anyway, I want to be clear. I wasn't doing this to be cruel. I was doing this because she'd built her entire plan around the assumption that I was predictable, boring, easy to manage, the kind of guy who would never surprise her. And I wanted to correct that assumption, thoroughly. Imagine you're the contestant. You've spent a year running what you think is a flawless operation. The boring boyfriend is primed. Your friends are waiting for the victory screenshot. You pick out your outfit. Practice your surprised face in the mirror. Then you show up to the restaurant and instead of a ring box, a manila envelope. No diamond, a document saying you have 30 days to find a new place to live. The apartment, never yours. The furniture, gone. And you can't even be publicly mad because that would mean admitting why it happened. He didn't just leave, he evaporated. You didn't see it coming because you never actually looked at him. The anniversary dinner was on a Saturday. She'd picked the restaurant, an Italian place downtown called Luca's. White tablecloths, candles, the works. She wore a dark green dress and had her hair pinned up. She looked beautiful. I'll give her that. Even knowing what I knew, there was a half second when she walked toward the table where my chest tightened and something old and stupid in my brain said, maybe you're wrong, maybe the call was a joke, maybe they were kidding. They weren't kidding. I'd gone back and checked. The morning after I heard the call, I looked at her phone while she was in the shower. I'm not proud of that, but I needed to confirm what I'd heard before I detonated my entire life over it. And there it was. A group chat called The Bet with a crown emoji. Months of messages. Screenshots of texts I'd sent her that she'd shared with the group. My actual messages, things I'd said in private, in vulnerability, in what I thought was trust. Forwarded to 4 women who responded with crying, laughing emojis and comments like, "He's so in it," and "Girl, he's gone," and "Easiest $800 of my life." There was a message from 3 months in that said, "He told me he's never felt this way about anyone. I almost felt bad, LOL. Almost felt bad. Almost. So no, I wasn't wrong. And I wasn't going to let a green dress and a half second of weakness change the plan. We sat down. We ordered. She got the pappardelle. I got the risotto. The risotto was actually incredible. Wild mushroom with truffle oil. I remember thinking, at least the food is good. Strange thing to focus on. But your brain does that when you're about to blow something up. It latches onto the small, normal things. She was smiling the whole time. Giddy, almost. She kept glancing at my jacket pocket, looking for a bulge, a ring box shape. She wasn't subtle about it. We made small talk through the appetizer. She talked about her week. I nodded. She talked about a coworker she didn't like. I said, "That's rough." She talked about wanting to repaint the bathroom. I almost laughed at that one. Repaint the bathroom. In the apartment she'd be leaving in 30 days. After the entrees arrived and we'd eaten about half, she put her fork down and looked at me. The look. The, okay, this is the moment look. She said, "Bryce, this has been the best year of my life. I mean that. Being with you has been..." She paused. Practiced pause. Everything. I let the silence sit for about 3 seconds. Then I reached into my jacket. Her eyes went wide. Her lips parted slightly. I could practically hear her composing the text she'd send to the group chat in 20 minutes. I pulled out an envelope. Manila. Standard size. Not ring box shaped. Her face did this thing, a micro expression shift that lasted maybe a full second. Confusion, then recalibration, then a forced smile. She said, "What's this?" I said, "Open it." She opened it. Inside was the formal notice from Dennis, the notice to vacate. 30 days. Along with a printout of my lease termination confirmation and a bullet-pointed summary I'd typed up myself, Because I'm a data analyst, and data analysts make bullet-pointed summaries that outlined the following. The lease was in my name, her occupancy was informal and undocumented. My personal property had been removed, and she should coordinate with the landlord regarding her options. She read it. I watched her read it. Her eyes moved across the page, and I could see the exact moment she understood what was happening. The color left her face. Not dramatically, more like a slow drain, starting at her forehead and moving down. She said, "What is this? Bryce, what is this?" I said, "It's a notice to vacate. You have 30 days. She said, "Is this a joke?" I said, "No." She said, "Bryce, I don't understand. What's happening? Why are you... What did I do?" And here's the part where I could have unloaded. I could have said everything. The call, the bet, the group chat, the crown emoji, spreadsheet guy, the $800. Every single thing I'd heard and read and carried for 2 weeks while I dismantled our shared life one box at a time. I could have laid it all out right there at the table with the white cloth and the candles and the half-eaten risotto. But I didn't. I said, "You know what you did." 4 words. That's all I gave her. Because the thing about people who run games, they know when the game is over. You don't have to explain it. You just have to show them the scoreboard. She stared at me. 5 seconds. 10. Her jaw tightened. I could see the calculation happening. The same kind of calculation she'd been doing for a year, except now it was running in reverse. What does he know? How much does he know? Can I recover this? She said, "Bryce, whatever you think happened." I stood up. I put $200 on the table. Cash. Enough to cover the meal, and a generous tip because the server was great and none of this was her fault. I straightened my jacket. I said, "Happy anniversary," and I walked out. I didn't look back. Not because I was trying to be cinematic, but because there was nothing back there I needed. Not anymore. So, Bryce walks out of an Italian restaurant on a Saturday night. The risotto was good. The envelope was served. The contestant is sitting at a table for 2 with a notice to vacate and no audience to perform for. Meanwhile, Bryce is driving to a storage unit where his life is packed in labeled boxes. Because of course he labeled them. He's going to be fine. Tomorrow he'll wake up, make coffee, and not explain standard deviation to anyone who doesn't want to hear it. The contestant bet on boring. She lost. And the house, literally, always wins. Especially when the house has a lease and receipts. The aftermath was quieter than you'd expect. She texted me that night. A lot. I didn't respond. The first few were angry. "You can't do this. This is insane. Who does this?" Then they shifted to confused. "Bryce, please talk to me. I don't understand what's happening. Can we just talk?" Then by Sunday, they got strategic. "I'll get a lawyer. You can't just kick me out. I have tenant rights." She was partially right about the tenant rights part. Even without a formal lease, she'd established residency by living there, and in Ohio, that does afford certain protections. But here's the thing, I hadn't illegally evicted her. I'd provided a proper 30-day notice through the landlord. I'd removed my own property, which I was entitled to do, and I'd terminated my own lease, which was within my rights. She wasn't being thrown onto the street. She had 30 days and the option to sign her own lease with Dennis at market rate if she wanted to stay. She didn't stay. She moved out within 2 weeks. I know because Dennis told me. He said she left the place in decent shape except for the bathroom. She left some kind of green paint samples on the wall. The paint samples. For the bathroom, she was going to repaint in someone else's apartment. I told my mom about a week after the dinner. I drove to her house on a Sunday and sat at her kitchen table and told her the whole thing. She didn't interrupt. She didn't react until I was done. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Bryce, you handled that with more composure than I would have." And then she said, "I'm proud of you, but I'm also angry for you. You deserved better. You deserve better." She made me lunch after that. Grilled cheese and tomato soup, the same thing she made me when I was a kid and had a bad day. I'm 29 years old and I almost cried over grilled cheese. I mean, I held it together. But it was close. My buddy Owen, the one who lent me the truck, was the only friend I told the full story to during those 2 weeks. He helped me move the bigger items and never once said anything stupid like, Are you sure about this? Or maybe you should talk to her first? He just showed up, carried boxes, and at the end of the last trip said, Bryce, that was the most organized breakup I've ever seen. You had a timeline and everything. Yeah, I had a timeline. I want to address something people might be thinking. Was I too cold? Was walking out without an explanation harsh? Maybe. I've thought about it. But here's my perspective. She had 12 months to be honest with me. 12 months of dinners and mornings and shared space where she could have said, hey, this started as something dumb, but I actually care about you. She never did. She maintained the performance right up to the final act. So I gave her a final act of my own. The difference is mine came with paperwork. I also want to say, and this might sound weird, I don't hate her. Hate requires energy, and I'm not willing to spend energy on someone who spent a year spending mine. What I feel is more like recognition. I recognize what happened. I recognize what she is. And I recognize that I'm better off with a storage unit full of my own stuff and an empty apartment than with a full apartment and an empty relationship. It's been about 3 months since the dinner. I moved into a new place, 1 bedroom, smaller, but it's mine and only mine. I set up my desk by the window, my books are back on shelves, my gaming PC runs fine. It was never broken. I've been cooking more. Made a risotto last week actually. Wild mushroom. Tried to recreate the one from Luca's. It wasn't as good, but it was mine. And I ate it at my own table, in my own apartment, without wondering if the person across from me was performing. My mom calls every Sunday now. She didn't used to. It was more like every other week. But since everything happened, it's been every Sunday. She doesn't always bring it up. Sometimes we just talk about regular stuff. Her garden, my work, whether the Reds are going to have a decent season this year. Answer, probably not, but hope is free. But every call ends the same way. She says, you're a good man, Bryce. And I say, thanks, Mom. And she says, don't let anyone make you think boring is a bad thing. Boring pays the bills. Boring shows up. Boring remembers the coffee order. She's right. She usually is. Final update. Owen sent me a text last week. Apparently, through some mutual acquaintance chain I don't fully understand, he heard that the contestants' friend group had a falling out after the whole situation. 2 of the 4 friends thought the bet was just a joke, and that the contestant took it too far. The other 2 apparently defended it. The group chat, the bet, with the crown emoji, was deleted. I don't know if that's true. I don't care enough to verify. But there's something satisfying about the idea that the same group of people who laughed about me for a year couldn't hold it together for 3 months after the punchline walked out. I haven't dated anyone since. Not because I'm damaged or gun-shy or whatever. I'm just not in a rush. I spent a year giving everything to someone who gave nothing real back, and I think I've earned the right to sit with myself for a while. To cook my own meals. To watch my own documentaries. To organize my spice rack alphabetically and not have anyone change it. The ring I was going to buy, the one in the browser tab, I closed that tab the night I heard the call. Didn't bookmark it. Didn't save it. Just closed it. 3 options from a jeweler downtown. Gone. And in their place, a storage unit receipt, a lease termination confirmation, and an air mattress. Some trades aren't fair, but some trades are necessary. I keep thinking about something one of her friends said on that call. I can't believe Spreadsheet Guy is about to propose. Spreadsheet Guy. That's what they saw. A boring man with a boring job who was easy to manipulate because he was sincere. And maybe they were right about the boring part. I do love spreadsheets. I love clean data and organized columns and formulas that work. But here's what they didn't understand about Spreadsheet Guys. We track everything. We document everything. We notice when the numbers don't add up. And when we find a discrepancy, we don't panic. We just close the file, archive the data, and move on to the next project. She bet on boring. I don't think she understood what boring actually means. Boring isn't weak. Boring isn't oblivious. Boring is patient. Boring is precise. And boring keeps receipts. I'm fine. I'm more than fine. I'm sitting at my desk right now in my new apartment with a cup of coffee, black, no sugar. I only did the oat milk thing because she liked it. And the window open and nothing in this room that belongs to someone who didn't earn it. The air mattress is gone. I bought a real bed, a good one, king size. It's too big for one person and I don't care. I sleep in the middle and I take up all the space I want. Anyway, that's my story. The boring guy who got played. Except the game ended differently than anyone expected. And the only person who walked away with anything of value was the one they'd been laughing at. So here's my question for you all. And I genuinely want to know. Would you have confronted her the night you heard the call? Or would you have done what I did? Stayed quiet, made a plan, and let the plan speak for itself? Because I've heard both sides. Some people say I should have given her a chance to explain. Some people say I let her off easy. I don't think either is right. I think I did exactly what I needed to do, but I'm one guy. And I've been wrong before. About a lot of things. Including a girl in a green dress who made me think I was finally someone's first choice. Here's what gets me about Bryce. He's not the revenge guy. He's not the drama guy. He's the guy who hears the worst thing he's ever heard about himself, and instead of reacting, he opens a spreadsheet. He makes a checklist. He rents a storage unit. And over 2 weeks, with the precision of someone who reconciles data for a living, he removes himself from a situation that was designed to humiliate him. And he does it so cleanly that the person running the game didn't even see the exit coming. The contestant bet her friends $800 she could get a boring guy to propose. She won the bet. But she lost the apartment, the furniture, the relationship, and the friend group. $800. That's the return on a year of faking it. Meanwhile, Bryce has a new apartment, a king-size bed, and a spice rack organized alphabetically. Drop a comment. Would you have confronted her that night or played the long game? And what's the worst wrong reasons dating story you've ever heard? Subscribe, and I'll see you next time.